truly excited. I have a message that I've been working on for several weeks now, and I want to, I pray that I can get the message that I desire to get. And one of the challenges that I have is I'm always trying to make sure that out of everything I'm saying, that the bottom line is reached. I have so much in my thoughts, in my head, and I'm reading so much that I'm hoping that it doesn't, the main point don't get drowned out by all of the other details. So today what I'm going to do, I'm going to give you my conclusion from the very beginning, so I don't miss my point. So the topic for today is chosen. Who shall be saved? And as we ponder on that, that's truly my question. Who shall be saved? And when I get to the end, I'm going to prove to you who will be saved. So as I said, my main point, my conclusion is first. Then I'll give the details. So let's dig in. So as I begin, I want to start with Matthew. Matthew chapter 22, verses 1 through 14. And I'm going to give you a little more detail as to my conclusion. So here is my conclusion. Actually, this one chapter right here, these 14 verses, is my whole message. But I'm going to give you a couple of other comparisons so that you can see this is something you've always known. This is something you always read. Matthew is one of those books that come, with us from church. So we know this one. So here we go. How do you come here without your garment? So this is something evidently you are familiar with. So let's dig in. And Yahshua responded and spoke to them again by parables and said, the reign of heavens is like a man, a sovereign who made a wedding feast for his son, and sent out his servants to call those who were invited to the wedding feast. But they would not come. Again, he sent out other servants, saying, say to those who are invited, see, I have prepared my dinner. My oxen and my fatted cattle are slaughtered, and all is ready. Come to the wedding feast. But they disregarded it and went their way. This one to his field, that one to his trade. And the rest having seized his servants, insulted and killed them. But when the sovereign heard, he was wroth and sent out his soldiers, destroy those murderers, and set their city on fire. Then he said to his servants, the wedding feast indeed is ready, but those who were invited were not worthy. Now, these are the first ones that he sent out to. Come, the wedding is ready. I prepared my dinner. All you have to do is come have a seat. And it says that they would not. But the invitation was extended. So as Rabbi Tu would say, and an offer and acceptance. It was an offer, but they didn't accept. So who are they that did not accept? These are the aristocrats. These are the people who are prominent. These are people who say that they are worthy and somebody and need to be respected and regarded in society. But they would not come. They all had an excuse. Well, Yahweh said, look, I have my oxen, my fatted cattle, I've slaughtered them. Everything is ready. So what he did now is sent out his servants to say, go back out and invite others. But as they disregarded it, now that reminds me of Hebrews chapter 10, verse 28. Those who disregard the laws of Moses die without compassion. Read it. I know I keep going back there. So when they seized the servants, who are the servants? The servants are the Hebrews. The servants are those who had the Torah and was going around with the Torah to give the invitation, and later on you will see the king. Let me continue. They insulted and killed them. The prophets, the priests. But when the sovereign heard, he was wroth and sent out his soldiers, destroyed those murderers, and set their cities on fire. So who do you think the soldiers are? The messengers. Messengers. Now, whether they're the fallen messengers or the messengers of Yahweh, you choose. Either way, they have a job to do, and they're going to do exactly what they were called to do. Then he said to his servants, the wedding feast indeed is ready, but those who were invited were not worthy. Let's continue. No. My computer is trying to restart and remind me tomorrow. All right, so hopefully that took. Okay. Sometimes it works, sometimes it don't. Therefore, go to the street corners, and as many as you could find, invite to the wedding feast. Now, when it says invite as many as you can find, that means anyone you find, invite them, right? That's everybody. Anyone, right? Continuing. And those servants went out into the street corners and gathered all whom they found, both wicked and good. So that's everybody. Wicked and good, right? Continuing to move. And the wedding hall was filled with guests. And when the sovereign came into view the guests, he saw there a man who had not put on a wedding garment. And he said to him, friend, how did you come in here not having a wedding garment? And he was speechless. The friend, he couldn't talk. Then the sovereign said to the servant, the servants, bind him hand and foot, take him away, and throw him out into the outer darkness. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth, for many are called, but few are what? chosen. That's my whole message right there. That's my whole message. With a question, who shall be saved? Now, when we get to the very last slide, you will see who will be saved. But as I said, I'm giving you my conclusion up front. So I will answer that question. Those who will be saved are those who are obedient to doing what the Messiah has required of us. Those who will be saved are those who are obedient to Yahweh of what he has set forth as the condition of salvation. So y'all guessed it. I'm talking about salvation. I sure am. So let's continue. Why are you here without your garment? So look at the process. He invited all those who thought they were worthy, anyone who was anyone. They chose not to come. So he sent out his servants. He said, now go invite anyone, because those others, they're not coming. So let's go ahead and fill up the seats. And so look what they did. They chose to destroy the servants who went out rather than being obedient to what was taking place. Now, those who decided that they would come, filled the place up. So that was both good and bad, those who was worthy and those who were not worthy. It just didn't matter at this point. Whoever will, let him come, right? So I have two books that I'm going to match up with what I just left, Matthew's, and I'm going into the first of the two, Leviticus. And some of you, those of you who were on the line Tuesday night, you heard me refer to this, that as we are going through the book of Leviticus, it's giving us Yahweh's instructions for salvation. It's not a surprise for me to say that now, because I've been saying that for quite some time, and I've done that on purpose because I want you to get used to me referring to the Torah as Yahweh's plan of salvation. I don't want it to be a shock when you hear it. Now, it may be for those who hear, for the first time, but and I'm gonna slide up just a little bit so I can make sure I see everyone. So the camera may be off just a little. So as we go through Leviticus, I'm going to go through 12, 13, and 14. Okay? Because I need for you to follow my progression to see the details now on what I gave you. What I'm striving for is for you to know emphatically what salvation looks like. That no one can convince you otherwise, and this is for your children. I want this to be so strong that our babies grow up understanding what salvation is. We are in a turning point. We're changing it up for our babies, our generations coming behind us. See, we learned about shouting, speaking in tongue, and running around the church and laying on hands and all the things that were, that looked good. The no more sheets and woman thou art loose. We learned all of that stuff. We saw it. We was here before it came, and we're still here. So as we move now, we need to transition along with Yahweh, his Torah, because he's transitioning us to a time of return. So, Leviticus chapter 12. And Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, speak to the children of Israel, saying, when a woman has conceived and has given birth to a male child, then she shall be unclean 7 days. As in the days of her monthly separation, she is unclean. And on the 8th day, the flesh of the foreskin is circumcised, and she remains in the blood of her cleansing 33 days. She does not touch whatever is set apart, and she does not come into the set apart place until the days of her cleansing are complete. Everyone say complete. I need for you to remember that. So she's unclean for how long? 7 days, right? In her monthly separation. But now we have childbirth, and we put 33 days on top of that for a son, and that'll take us to 40 days, right? But when her time of separation is complete, she can now rejoin the community in the worship gathering, right? So, verses 5 through 8, but if she gives birth to a female, then she shall be unclean for 2 weeks. So that's 2 sevens. 7, 14 days. As in her monthly separation, and she remains in the blood of her cleansing for 66 days. And when the days of her cleansing are completed, for a son or for a daughter, now it's both the son and the daughter, she brings to the priest a lamb a year old as an ascending offering, and a young pigeon or a turtle dove as a sin offering to the door of the tent of appointment, and she shall bring it before Yahweh and make atonement for her, and she shall be cleansed from the flow of her blood. This is the Torah for her who has given birth to a male or a female. And if she is not able to bring a lamb, then she shall bring 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, one as an ascending offering and the other as a sin offering. And the priest shall make atonement for her, and she shall be what? Clean. I'm pushing through for a reason because I have a lot here. So I'll get this, I'll bring it all together in a few minutes. It's 12. Okay, let me go back because we're coming into 13. So 12 starts out with if a woman has a child. Now, let's go back to 11, which I don't have here. 11 tells us what? How to eat clean, what we should and should not eat. These are instructions for the Hebrew lifestyle. And if you follow it, it will give you long life. But if you disregard it right away, Yahweh sees you as unclean. Now, I want to connect to the garden. Do we still have a problem with eating when Yahweh said to Adam and Havah, Eve, do not eat from the tree in the midst of the garden? And we know how that turned out, right? I'm condensing. They died. Condensing. What do you think is going to happen if you disregard Leviticus chapter 11? Now we're doing these things in remembrance of Yahshua. Don't think that is not valid. Chapter 12 gives us now a woman having a child. So what happened when Yahweh gave us chapter 11? They were at Mount Sinai, right? And when they went through Mount Sinai, this was Yahweh and who? Israel. Israel being who? The bride. Went into a covenant at Mount Sinai, right? So now, chapter 12. Chapter 12 right away says now, here's the bride. if a woman has a child. So who's the woman? The woman at Mount Sinai. They married. Yahweh is the husband. Israel is the bride. And now what's taking place is she's pregnant. She's having a child. And if she has a child, he's connecting us back to Adam and the first sin. What are the procedures to become what? Clean, to become whole. And if you don't follow it, guess what? You have not become clean. So when he gave us all of the parts, there's the 40. How many years were they in the wilderness? 40 years. There you go. 80 days. Well, with 80 days, we see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then on the 7th day, what do you do with the male child? Excuse me, the 8th day, what do you do with the male child? Circumcise him, right? So if she has a son, so there's a reason that Yahweh started with the female first. But right behind the female comes who? When a man becomes unclean. I'm giving you summaries of Leviticus. And so as we move through it, we're going to start with Leviticus chapter 13. This is the most direct, strongest book as a servant you can ever read. It gives you the instructions of a man or woman who becomes defiled, how to become clean. And Yahweh spoke to Moshe and Aaron, saying, when a man has on the skin of his body a swelling, a scab, a bright spot, and shall become on the skin of the body like a leprous infection, then he shall be brought to Aaron the priest, or to one of his sons the priest, and the priest shall look at the infection of the skin of the body and the hair. If the hair on the infection has turned white and the infection appears to be deeper than the skin of the body, it is a leprous infection. And the priest shall look at him and pronounce him what? Unclean. But if the bright spot is white on the skin of the body and does not appear to be deeper than the skin, and its hair has not turned white, then, the priest shall shut the infected one up. How long? 7 days. There's something I'm driving for. I'll give that to you as I continue. But here's a little hint. Keep up with the 7 days. So if this man here has now become unclean, we need to know, how can he become clean? I'm really pushing y'all, because I'm going straight through. We're at 13, verse 5 through 9. Here's the priest on the 7th day. And the priest shall look at him on the 7th day. Everyone say 7th day. And see if the infection appears to be as it was, and the infection has not spread on the skin, then the priest shall shut him up another 7 days. Remember, we just had a question. The first, he looked like he might be infection, so he gives us how infection looks. But if it's not deeper than the skin, then you can't call it the infection yet. So what should he do before I get too far? Shut him up how many days? 7 days. It should start. It should start to become a little clearer where I'm pushing. Let's see. And then the priest shall shut him up what? Another 7 days. And the priest shall look at him what? Again on the 7th day. So 7 days have now passed. He looks like he might be infectious, but we don't know, because the white hair didn't go deeper in the skin. In other words, it wasn't sunken. It wasn't a crater or a carve in deeper than his skin. So he must be what? Shut up for 7 days, and then the priest will see him again. And when he sees him again, he will judge whether the white hair has turned black. If it turns black and remains above surface, then he shall do what? Pronounce him clean. But if it's sunken and is still white, he's now pronounced unclean. Pushing through. Chapter 14, let me go back. Just quickly, I want to wrap up 13. So, who do you think that priest is? I don't want to miss this. Who do you think that priest is? We can see if he looks like he's unclean and you're not sure, Mr. Priest, brother priest, if you're not sure, quarantine him. Shut him in. For how long? 7 days. But upon the next inspection, he's had time to fully mature whether or not he is infected. And if he is infected, you shut him up again, but you pronounce him as unclean. So if he's found on the next inspection to be unclean, to be clean after that, after he had some time away, then he can rejoin the congregation. So we saw it say, take him to Aharon, the high priest. But there is something a little deeper. I'm itching to give it to you now, so I think I'm going to do that. So who's our high priest? Yahshua is our high priest. And so when I get to chapter 14, you're going to see a little clearer what I'm pushing for here in Leviticus. The high priest here is Yahshua, and there's 7 days. So if we use the model that Yahweh has given us, a day is 1,000 years, 1,000 years as 1 day. There's something that he's pushing for everyone to in the time frame be saved. If you're going to fall, you better take your fall now and get back up. But you don't waddle in it. So he's made a way for those who fall. Now, chapter 14, as I conclude Leviticus, and 14 is going to conclude that for me, then I'll go into another book to give another comparison, and I'm done. But as we look at how do we become clean, what is the process, he tells us. But for those who disregard it, the process is back in the Old Testament. It's those things that you felt was old and antiquated that will save you. I already gave you my conclusion, so I don't mind telling you. So Yahshua is the high priest, and he's going through each generation, very meticulous. By the time I get to my next book, I'm going to show you the individual. But let's look at the generation. Let's look at 1 day at a time. 1 day is what? 1,000 years. And so there's a what? Millennial reign at the end of 6 days. The seventh day, we go into a what? A millennial reign, which is the kingdom of Yahweh in the earth revealed. It's not going to be like what it is now. It will be revealed as to who they are. So we still have some time to go. Leviticus chapter 14, verses 1 through 6. Blood on the wings. What is this about? And Yahshua spoke to Moshe, saying, this shall be the Torah of the leper for the day of his cleansing. So notice, this is the day of his cleansing. He did become unclean. Notice he calls him the cleansing of who? The leper. So it wasn't that he was suspected of being unclean. He was unclean. But the suspicion of being unclean was the white hair, but the hair didn't go deeper than the skin. And so he shut him in, And then he went along the process of cleansing, and then he was inspected again 7 days later, and the hair, if it turned black and did not sink, then he shall be pronounced clean. But if it was still white and sunk still, and it began to spread across the body, he's now unclean. So now we're at the place of him being a leper, but now he's ready for cleansing. Okay, let's continue. He shall be brought to the priest. Who is the priest? Yahshua. I think we can get a little more help with that one. Let me try it again. He shall be brought to the priest. Who is the priest? There you go. And the priest shall go outside the camp, and the priest shall look and see if the leprosy is healed in the leper. Then the priest shall command, and he shall take for him who is to be cleansed 2 live and clean birds, and cedar wood, and scarlet and hyssop. And the priest shall command, and he shall slay one of the birds in an earthen vessel over running water. Let him take the live bird and the cedar wood and the scarlet and the hyssop and dip them, that's the clean bird, the cedar, the scarlet and the hyssop. They're all being combined in this earthen vessel. All right, so let him take the live bird and the cedar wood and the scarlet and the hyssop and dip them, that's the them, and the live bird in the blood of the bird that was slain over running water. Now, I think I'm just going to have to give you this one right here, and then I'll continue. But who do you think that live bird is? Don't answer. Who do you think the slain bird is? Don't answer. And it is Yahshua. It is Yahshua. The giveaway, let me ask like this. What gave it away? The one who was slain. So look at the one who was slain and the one who was alive. The one who was alive was dipped in the earthen vessel along with the cedar wood, the scarlet, and the hyssop, right? The cleansing and the earthen vessel, right? So there is symbolic gesture of the cleansing of the one who lives because of the one who died. But there's a phenomenon that is taking place with the one who died. As he flies, what's on his wings but blood and water? And he is spreading it to all those who receive on the ground. For the one who died for me is the reason that I can spread my wings once again, because he died for me. Now, I can go through, let me just give you a little more piece of this so you know how Yahshua fulfilled this. There's 2. There's Yahshua, who's Barabbas ben Yahshua. Then there's Barabbas, who was the man who was committed for murder. And on this time at Passover, tradition says, I shall let one go free. And when Pilate asked, who shall I let go free? You already know. It wasn't Yahshua. He was chose for death. And so there we see how Yahshua fulfills the blood on the wings. So as I continue, and I'm going to try to keep moving, verses 7 through 11, still in Leviticus chapter 14. And he said, and he shall sprinkle it 7 times on him who is to be cleansed from the leprosy, and shall pronounce him clean, and shall let the live bird loose in the open field. And he who is to be cleansed shall wash his garments, and shall shave off all his hair, and wash himself in water, and be clean. Then after that he comes into what? The camp. but shall stay outside his tent 7 days. And on the 7th day it shall be that he shaves all the hair off his head and his beard and his eyebrows, even all his hair he shaves off. And he shall be clean. And on the 8th day, everyone say 8th day, he takes two male lambs, perfect ones, one ewe a year old, a perfect one, and 3/10 of an ephah of flour mixed with oil as a grain offering, 1 log of oil. And the priest who is cleansing shall present the man who is to be cleansed with these offerings before Yahweh at the door of the tent of meeting. Tent of appointment, actually, the next page will say. So, can you see Yahshua presenting us to Yahweh? When he returns, he's going to do a wave offering from the earth. And we're going to be waved before Yahweh. We will be the gift that he returns. Hebrews says, I think it's chapter 10, anywhere from 8 to 10, but I believe it's 10, that talks about every priest must give a sacrifice and an offering. Yahshua was the sacrifice. So guess what he has to return to do? The offering. Excuse me, I think I have that backwards. He was the blood sacrifice offering. We will be the gift in the earth. So as we look at this, I want to remind you of Revelation chapter 6 and chapter 16. We have 7 seals, 7 trumpets, which are the warnings, and 7 bowls. This is the bowls of evil being poured out on the earth. So right there you see sprinkling 7 times. And I've seen this for a number of years now. And I think this year, as we were going through the Torah study, he opened up something for me so amazing and a little more. And right here in chapter 14, as I was reading, I began to rumble within myself. And I had to do all I could to continue to read chapter 14. And as I was reading, I can see clarity begin to open up. Let me rephrase that. The Holy Spirit began to open up something a little more deep for me, which is Yahshua. We are being the unclean vessels that are shut up for 7 days. But then he inspects us. Remember, he comes back for what? The millennial reign. That's our inspection. We will be taken before the Messiah. We will be taken before Yahweh, and a wave offering will be given. But only those who have accepted the cleansing process. And the cleansing process, he has already been explaining to us. Let me give it to you a different way. He tells the end from what? That wasn't even a challenge. I already knew you would be able to finish that. I was confident. I didn't have to say a word. I knew you knew that. But here's the details on how it is. We learned that in the church. He tells the end from the beginning. We knew that from the church. We learned that. So now let's begin to understand how. When he gave us the instructions, the book of instructions, he tells us through there the end from the very beginning. You'll see what I'm talking about. I'm itching to get to the end part of this. So let me continue. Let me see. I read all of that, so I'm moving. Here we go. I'm moving into my last final book, and I'm going to compare. Now, it may seem like I was able to move through those a little quick. That was because I was intentionally moving quick, because I don't want to lose you or your attention on this last part. So I'm already going to ask you, make sure you hear it. Make sure you hear me. And for those of you who are watching by way of Zoom, please listen and understand from the beginning to the end. All right, now I'll explain. This is the KJV and the Apocrypha that I'm going into, and I will give you a little more on that as I move through. But I'm using the King James, and what I'm about to give you can be found in the King James Apocrypha. 1611 for sure, but other areas definitely. And what I've found as I've been studying, that there's variations between all of them. And as they vary in the words that they use to interpret, I would love to be able to see the original Hebrew on this. Because there's some areas that I know that when I have to real intently look at it really hard. Is this from the beginning, present, or end? And I have to really study it to put it together. And so I've been looking at this for several weeks now, and it's been even longer than that, I've been, looking into it. So we're going to start at chapter 6, and we're going to begin to look from the very beginning to the end. And he said to me, in the beginning, the earthly world, before the world exists, were made, before the gathered winds blew, before the voices of the thunder sounded, before the flashes of lightning shone, before paradise foundations were made firm, before the beautiful flowers were seen, before the powers of movement were established, before the innumerable heavenly armies of messengers were assembled, before the heights of the air were lifted up, before the measure of the firmament were named, before Zion's footstool was established, before the present years were reckoned, before the imagination of those who now sin were alienated, before those who stored up faith as a treasure were sealed, then I planned these things. What did he just say? From the very beginning, I've already planned the end. So I want you to know that what you're going through, the stress, I already planned your outcome. All you need to do is plan to stay on the path. If you do that, yes, you're going to go through some issues. Yes, you're going to experience some ups and some downs, but stay on the path. Everyone say, stay on the path. I'll say it a different way so you'll know it. There's a wide road that leads to what? I think you got it. All right, so let me continue. As they were done by me and not by another, so also the end will come. By me and not through another. I answered, what separates time? Now, let me explain who's talking. This is the book of Ezra. You know him better by Ezra. Ezra has several books, and it's said to have at least 5 books. But when you read the book of Ezra, you only see just that book of Ezra. But there's at least 5 books. And some historians believe that he also wrote either Nehemiah or parts of it. So let's continue, and see how Yahweh is being addressed. See, Yahweh is being questioned by Ezra. You'll see both the names come up. This is how I know that this is Ezra or Esdras. Okay? So, Esdras, let me give you the time frame. Esdras is Babylon and them returning home. Esdras gets information from Yahweh directly or by messenger, both ways, of the time frame of Yahshua who will enter into the earth. And so he says that he will come, but he will also die. And so Esdras is very disturbed because he's seeing the Hebrews now. If you know, if he saw his people taken off into exile or exile to Babylon and them having to return 70 years later, you know the brother saw some things and experienced. It wasn't a nice thing. Oh, you Hebrews, come with me. I'm going to give you a brand new house in Babylon. Come. No, they were not nice. So let's continue. As they were done by me and not by another, so also the end will come by me and not through another. I answered, what separates the times? What he's asking here, how would we know the end of one and the beginning of the other? So what is he talking about? He's talking about the beginnings that begin with Adam. And how does Adam end? So check it out how he resolves this for Ezra. When is the end of the first and the beginning of that which follows? He said to me, from Abraham to Abraham, because Jacob and Esau were born from him. But Jacob handheld Esau's heel from the outset. Esau represents the end of this age, and Yaakov represents the beginning of the following. The beginning of the one man is his hand, and the end of the other man is his heel. Don't look for anything else between heel and hand, Ezra. I answered, Supreme Master, if you only looked so favorably upon me that you would show your servant your final signs, which you showed me in part on previous night. So what Ezra is going through is a 21-day time of fast, starting with one section of 7. And on the 8th day, he would say, now do 7 more days. And then again, he would say, do 7 more days, and I will give you even more. And there's a period of time which I didn't share here, but I want very much to give to you. There's a time that he asked a question, and Yahweh said, look, I'm going to need more time with you. So what I want you to do is clear your calendar for 40 days. He says, tell your people you will be away for 40 days and bring these 5 servants with you. And he calls them by names. They're all like him, scribes. And then the next evening, Yahweh came along with Ezra, meeting him. And as Ezra began to speak, he had 5 other beings who all they did was scribe, write down everything he was saying. And Ezra, or Esdras, opened his mouth and began to speak. And they would take turns. As he spoke, they write. Then he would stop, they eat, sleep, and the process over again for 40 days. It should sound familiar. But what did he ask? Master, if you have found favor, I'll say it a little different. If you have found favor in me, will you show me the final signs? And Yahweh, he found favor in him. That's why I told you from the very beginning, this brother is asking some major important questions that we would even want to ask. And Yahweh is giving him answers. This is why I said, you need to hear this brother out. So verses 12 through, we're still in chapter 6. I'm going to conclude with chapter 7. So it's only 2 chapters that I'm going to give you to kind of, hopefully, I went a mid-range. Now, it's like 16 chapters of the second book of Ezra. So I would encourage you to read book 1 and book 2. And again, there's variations. So there's a lot of different variations. But anyway, let's continue. Verse 12 through 25. Let me go back and get that last part. Oh. Okay, he wants the final signs, which you showed me in part on previous nights. So he said, you have shown me some pieces, but not enough for me to fully understand, which you showed, and there it is, which you showed me in part in previous nights. He answered, get up on your feet. You'll hear a loud echoing voice. Don't be afraid if the place on which you stand is greatly moved while the voice is speaking. Since the word concerned the end, and since the foundation of the earth will understand, since the foundations of the earth will understand that speech is about them. What? What them? The foundations of the earth. So when the earth hears me speak, the earth is going to rumble because it's hearing that I'm speaking about it and what will transpire during its transformation. So the earth, don't be afraid, don't be alarmed. If I'm excited, so I'm keeping my voice down. Don't be afraid if the earth begins to tremble under your feet, because it's giving witness to what it is hearing. So let me continue. Since the word concerning the end and since the foundation of the earth will understand that speech, that the speech is about them, the place will tremble and shake because it knows that it is destined to be transformed. When I heard, I rose on my feet and listened. There was a voice speaking, and its sound was like the sound of deep waters. It said, look, the days are coming when I begin to come near to visit those who live on earth. When I begin to examine those, who examines? The high priest, right? Those who unjustly inflicted harm in their cruelties. When the humiliation of Zion is complete, when the seal is placed on the firmament, when the seal is placed on the age that begins to pass away, I will perform these signs. Scrolls will be opened in view of the firmament, and all will be seen together. Infants a year old will speak with their voices. The pregnant women will give birth to premature babies of 3 to 4 months. But they will live and dance. Fields that were not sown will suddenly appear sown. and full warehouses will suddenly be found empty. A trumpet will sound with a blast. When full, let me make sure where I'm at, and suddenly appears sown, and full warehouses will suddenly be found empty. A trumpet will sound with a blast. When all hears it, they will suddenly be terrified. In that time, friends will make war on friends. Like enemies, the earth, along with those who live on it, will be terrified. And the sources of rivers will stand still so that they don't run for 3 hours. Then everyone who is left after all these things that I have foretold to you will be saved. These will see my deliverance and the end of my age. So what's happening here? The millennial reign has begun. There's a transformation of the earth that is now taking place, even looking for another time, but when the time of the Messiah has to be revealed in the earth, there's going to take place a change in the land. Now, will this be all the earth or will this be Jerusalem? I have a feeling it's going to take place first in Jerusalem. Jerusalem has to go through a cleansing. Remember Zechariah chapter 14. Yahshua, as he returns, he steps on the Mount of Mount of Olives, and it is severed, split, right? That will be a catastrophe. Part will move to the north, part to the south. A wide crevice will come between the east and the west. So that's Israel going into a place of provision. And as even the children are, there's a transformation with the women and the babies. Notice that it won't be 9 months at this point. How will we know? Because they will give birth in the 3rd month and in the 4th month. Right here is a variation. It says premature. But when you look at other books, they don't call it premature. I'm just trying to stick with what is up there. If Yahweh give them 3 months, that's all he wanted them to have. Notice that he came right back and said, they will live and dance. And they will speak with full voices by the age and probably before the age of 1. Think about it now. How old is a child before they usually begin to speak? Somewhat close to the age of 2, they're really beginning to develop their words. And somewhat before that, some might be, even before, but 3 months, 3 months old, and he's saying they will begin to speak. Let me go back to it. Infants a year old will speak with their voices. They will live and dance. All right, so, and it says here, this is information that I've already told you, and it says that they will be saved. So we're already looking at a group of people who will what? Be saved. Now, I didn't read anything about them speaking in tongues, running around the building, or anything else. But they are doing something. They are doing something. These people who experiences this will be those who are observing the Sabbath day, the holy days, obedient to eating correct, and not eating from the tree of knowledge. Well, my parents ate like this. My grandparents ate like. If this was good enough for my grandparent, she lived to be 115. I have a great grandmother who was well beyond 100. I'm remembering 116. Now, I'm not sure. I spoke to one of my uncles the other day, a couple of weeks back, 2-3 weeks back, and he says that he's not sure either, but he remembers it now. He's in his 70s, 78, 79, somewhere around there. It might be 80. And he told me, he said he remembers, or he thinks that it was 103 to 106, somewhere around there he and I was discussing. I said, I remember great-grandma Lisa. I remember her very well. My maternal grandmother on my mother's side, and she had 16 children, and they had long lives. But what is that to eternity, and what is that to righteousness if you don't live according to his plan? So let's continue. Verse 26 through 34. They will see. Now, who is it that we're talking about? We're talking about, let me connect you to Matthew chapter 25, the 10 virgins. 5 are foolish, 5 are wise. Guess which ones gets to see this? The wise. They will see the people who have been taken up and who have tasted death from their, who haven't tasted death from their birth. The hearts of those who live on earth will be changed and converted to a different spirit. For evil will be erased and grief extinguished. Faith will flourish and corruption will be overcome. Truth that was without fruit for so long will be displayed. Wow. While he was still speaking with me, the place on which I stood was shaken. Little by little, he said to me, I came to show you these things this night. If you ask further and fast again for 7 days, so here's another 7 days, I will show you, I will again declare daily to you greater things than these, because the Most High has listened to your voice. The Mighty One has seen your virtue and perceived the humility you have had from your youth. Because of this, he sent me to show you all these things and to say to you, trust confidently and don't be afraid. Don't be hasty to think empty thoughts about the former times, lest you be hasty about the last times. So let me explain this, because I'm really coming close to going into my last chapter. Remember, he says the beginning of a man is his hand, and the end of a man is his heel. And then he says, Jacob and Esau. He says, in the womb, Jacob had the heel of Esau. Now, we know who came out first, Yaakov, right? And for all of his life, Esau complained about this. But look at the picture that Yahweh allows us to see first. That Yaakov had the heel of Esau. So the hand of a man is his beginning, and the heel of a man is his end. So Yaakov is the end, but Esau was the beginning. So those who destroy, those who desire to kill, maim, are first. And so he's getting to the meat of this major question, which is why I really wanted to slow this down to show you exactly the questions that he's asking. And I went to chapter 6, and the further I got into it, I started with the question first, going into chapter 7. I'm like, it's not enough meat there to really understand the full picture or see the full picture. So I went back to another question. I'm like, that's not enough. And I had to go back to another question till I got to the beginning of chapter 6. So what you're seeing now is chapter 7 getting ready to come in, and the question that I wanted us to really focus in on. So really hang tight with me now. He said to me, let me make sure I got it. Yeah, I was shaking little by little. He said to me, okay. So now he's saying, you want to know about the end time, but you also asked about the beginning. The beginning is with Adam, but with Adam, he fell. And so from Adam, something took place. And as this thing took place, you and all mankind began to see the suffrage of the effect of the fall. And so what you're seeing now is the beginning and the end. So the beginning and the fall will be restored by the kingdom. And this is what I was telling you about Leviticus chapter 14. Yahweh is giving us a peek. Understanding that a day is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is one day. And so as he began to give us this peek, he's given us a peek of this priest who has looked at us, saw us, and said, they're looking defiled, because we were. He said, let me shut them in 7 days. So 7 days we're shut in the earth. But guess what? He is getting ready to come back. And so if we got 6,000 years behind the earth now, guess what has to get ready to happen? The priest is getting ready to look at us. One by one, he's looking at us. How does he look at us by one? And he's talking about 1,000 years. Every person who is born into the earth, each of us have to die. One person at a time. And we are judged based on life. So let me continue. Ezra chapter 6, verse 54 through 59, which will culminate my chapter 6. Now I'm getting ready to go a bit deeper into my question and my quest. Looking at Ezra, really asking these major questions. Here is the kingdom of Yahweh getting ready to be revealed in the earth. And over these you set Adam, the leader over all these things, all the things you had made. So in other words, he made the vegetation, the seed, the animal kingdom, the insect kingdom. Over these things you made him leader, or he gave dominion over the earth. From him we all, the people who you have chosen, have been brought forth. I have said all these things before you, Master, because you have said that you created the oldest age for our sake. You have said that the other nations born of Adam are nothing, that they are like spit. And you have compared their abundance to a drop from a pitcher. So here's the major question that he's coming into. I'll get there in a second, but I need for you to see where he says, you said you made us from the oldest age, but for our sake, you made the earth. So he's leading somewhere. He's leading to a question here. And he said, those you made from Adam, all of the nations, are but spit. Now you fill that part in. But then again, he gives another comparison. Like one drop from a full pitcher. We are but one drop from a full pitcher. In other words, we're the least. But you made the earth for us. Yes. But look now, Master, these nations that are valued as nothing ruled over us and devour us, while we, your people, whom you have called the oldest offspring, remember, Israel, I called my firstborn out of Egypt. Your one and only child, those who are zealous for you, your dearest ones, are handed over to them. If the world was created for our sakes, why don't we possess our world as an inheritance? How long will this situation last? So he's not the only one that see these things and ask this type of question. Remember, in the book of Revelation, you have those who are under the altar who ask, how long before we see the revenge of those who have taken our blood, killed us, right? So he's asking a major question, and this is where I started. And I'm like, this is not enough to show the full picture. And so that's how you got all chapter 6. So now we're rolling to where I want to be. And so we're going to do some more comparing how he speaks to Esdras in chapter 7, 1 through 5. And I won't do the whole chapter of Esdras chapter 7, but I'm going to conclude with what I do give you from chapter 7. And when I had made an end of speaking these words, there was sent unto me the messenger which had been sent to me the night afore, it says before. And he said to me, up, Esdras, and hear the words that I come to tell you. And I said, speak on, my master. Then he said to me, the sea is set in a wide place, that it might be deep and great. But put the case, the entrance were narrow and like a river, who then would go into the sea to look upon it and to rule it. Now, there's a couple of thoughts that I'm like, okay, the rule is this judgment or looking at a measure of it or, understanding the depth of it. So either way, I understand because I've been studying this. And so here's the explanation as I continue to move. So he says about a sea. Imagine a sea. Now, we're not talking about a river. We're not talking about a lake. We're talking about the sea. So a sea is big and it's deep. Who can go to the middle of it to understand the most depth of the sea all at once? He says you must go through a narrow path. And that narrow path is a lake, maybe even a pond, a lake, a river, till you get to your ocean or your sea. So you start from the embankment. And now here's another, I'm going to give another example that he gave Job. He said, where were you when I created the sun, the moon, the stars? When I created the pathways of the waters and they get to the land and they go no further. So now you see where I'm going. So now you go to the land, and at the land you go to the water and you continue out until you get to the deepest part. Are you going to be able to measure the deepness of the depth of the water? But who's going to be able to do that? But in order to do that, start with the narrow place. There is another thing. So he's giving them another viewpoint. A city is built and set upon a broad field and is full of all good things. The entrance thereof is narrow and is set in a dangerous place to fall. Like as there were a fire on the right hand and on the left hand, deep water, and one only path, and one only path between them both, even between the fire and the water, so small that there could be one man go there at once. If this city now were given unto a man for an inheritance, if he never shall pass the danger set before it, how shall he receive the inheritance? I'm going to give you another example so you understand this one quickly. A rich man and his son. A rich man doesn't turn around and give his son all the riches, but he set perimeters for him to acquire. And as he proves himself worthy through his life, he knows that in death he will be a good what? Steward. And so this is how the rich man, who had to accumulate wealth at great toil, he doesn't want to give it to a son who would just take it and squander it. He want to make sure that, here's another scripture, a good man leaves an inheritance for who? His son's sons, right? So that's not just your son. He want to make sure that his son is worthy and a good steward to create more wealth, or at least enough wealth to pass on to his children's children. And then at some point, they begin to understand the importance of passing the wealth. So this is what he's saying. This is a narrow path. So if he doesn't pass the dangerous part, how would he inherit the earth or the plain and the spaciousness of what is going to be given in the end? So his life is full of turmoil on the left and on the right, but he must pass through. And this is what I was saying earlier. If you're going through situations in your life, keep going. Pass through. Stay on the narrow path. What is the narrow path? Torah is your path. Torah is your light. Torah is your salvation. Don't get off the pathway. Stay on the pathway. It doesn't matter what comes. It doesn't matter what goes. Stay on the path. You got to stay on the path. I gave you my conclusion from the beginning. Hallelujah. So I'm gonna keep on moving through this. How does he get the inheritance? So here's Yahweh, who will reveal in the end both his beginning and the end, verses 10 through 19. I said, indeed, Master, how he said to me, so also is Israel's portion. So he's saying, Israel, I want to make the connection to the last footage. Israel will inherit something, but Israel will not inherit it if they squander it away. If they're disobedient, they won't make it. So they have to keep going through, even though there's on the left and on the right. Here's another piece that I didn't share with you yet, I don't have here. He says when a man dies, let me kind of give this. He says he's brought before Yahweh. And these are questions that he's asked, and Yahweh explains it. And so this is one I don't have here, but you'll see this which is why I had to go back to get a good running start. When a man dies, he will be taken before Yahweh. He will see Yahweh. And that man will go through 7 levels of understanding or information or wisdom. 7 levels of wisdom before he is put where he goes. But one of them, I won't explain the 7, read Ezra's. One of those ways is that he see the left and the right. He see the good and he see the bad. He looks over and he see what he desires. He see what he wants. He see all of the good. And then he also sees the bad. And likewise, both men, I'm going to combine these 2 men because they take time to say what the bad man sees and then what the good man sees. They see both sides, and they both either anguish or are full of joy. And guess which one gets the joy? The one who was obedient and knows that this is where he's going. He went through tons of life in the earth, turmoil. He was beaten. He was everything imaginable, but he stayed the course, and he made it before the Mashiach. He made it before the Master, and he's standing now to be judged, and he looks over on the right-hand side, and he sees what he's getting ready to inherit. It's the wide field put into a place where there's open space, and the depth of it is unimaginable. Eyes have not seen, neither have ears heard what Yahweh has prepared. I go away, that I prepare a place for you, that where I am, you shall be also. Hallelujah. I'm toning it down because I'm so excited here. Oh my goodness. Hallelujah. Woo. Let's see. All right. Verses 10 through 19. Ezra chapter 7. I said, indeed, Master, he said to me, so also is Israel's portion. I indeed made the world on account of them. When Adam transgressed my ordinances, what had been made was judged, and the entrances of this world were made narrow, sorrow, and troublesome. They are few and bad, full of danger, and involving people in great hardships. The entrances of the greater world, however, are spacious and secure, and they generate the fruit of immortality. If those who live don't enter these narrow and empty places, they can't receive the things that are in store. Therefore, why are you disturbed being corruptible? And why are you upset being mortal? Why haven't you focused your mind on what is still to come, rather than what is present? I answered, this is Ezra, Supreme Master, you ordained in your law, it's being revealed, that the just will inherit these things, but the impious will perish. The just then can tolerate the narrow, hoping for the spacious, but those who have acted impiously endure the narrow and won't see the spacious. He who said to me, you aren't a higher judge than God Elohim, nor more intelligent than the Most High. And so the messenger who's talking to him kind of went into him here. What you're thinking, you're not wiser than Yahweh. So what he's asking about, from the beginning, we've had trouble, we had issues. And from Adam, we all come. And he explains that because of the original sin, the entrance to this world that he's speaking of, that they get to see both the good and the bad. Wait a minute. Who was invited to the wedding? Good and bad. For those who are both good and bad will see both good and bad. But those who don't make it into the good will be part of their anguish and sorrow eternally. That's dangerous, to walk outside of Yahweh's law and think that you're going to inherit heaven automatically. That's a bad place to be in. So let's see, let me make sure. So he's saying those of us who walk in our sin, we walk and we tolerate the narrow path, hoping to make it to the spacious part. And so right here, he digs in and says, you're trying to judge the end from by what you see, the present. And keep in mind, what did he see? He saw Israel in its former glory, but he also saw Israel taken off to Babylon. So he's talking from a very understandable place, a place that many of us, if we're truthful, can say we also have been. A place where we look at our situations and try to understand, well, I've been a tither. I've been faithful. I've been keeping my commands. But notice that he says that man born of a woman is full of what? Troubles. So stay on the path. Verse 20 to 29. So we're going to take a look at those who reject Yahweh's laws, which are his commands. Better that many of those now alive should perish than the law of Yahweh, which is laid out before them, be disregarded. Yahweh commanded those who came or come into the world after they came. What they needed to do to live, and what laws they should observe to avoid punishment, but they weren't persuaded and opposed him. They filled their heads with worthless thoughts, and they invented excuses for their sins. They emphatically denied that the Most High exists, and they didn't learn his ways. What are his ways? Passover, Sukkot, eating clean, love your neighbor as yourself, no other God. They despised his laws and rejected his covenants. They weren't faithful to his statutes and didn't perform, here it is, very clear, the works he prescribed. Let me make sure that that's clear. What are the works that he prescribed? You do this in remembrance of me. And before that, he said, do this as a law. How long? Forever. I'm afraid we haven't concluded forever yet. So that means this is still valid. Therefore, Ezra, empty things are for the empty, and full things are for the full. Look, the time is coming when the signs appear that I told you about in advance, and the city will appear, appearing as a bride, and the land that is now hidden will be openly displayed. Everyone who is rescued from the evil woes will see my wonders. My son, the anointed one, will be revealed along with those who are with him, and those who remain will rejoice for 400 years. After these years, my son, the anointed one, and all who have human breath will die. Now, when I got here, I had to really study this out, and I'm going to just give you a brief part because this is something that I still have to look at. But there's two conclusions that I've come to. Is he talking about 400 years from this point? Or is he talking about 4 days from another point when the Messiah comes back? Either way, it's good. Either way. And here's why I say that. Because coming out of Egypt, Yahweh, he shows us two things. Before Egypt, he says to Abraham, your seed would be enslaved and mistreated for 400 years. But then when they came out of Egypt, he says they were there for 400, not in Egypt alone, but you got to go, you got to connect to Abraham when he spoke to Abraham, 430 years. Those two numbers are so close, some people will miss that they are two different things. And so right here, these two numbers are so close that it also could miss. Now, that's my interpretation. That's what I come away with. I looked at others. Some people think it's 400 years from this moment Yahshua will be born in the earth, and those who are with him, the disciples who are with him, will also be cut off, taken away. Israel itself will come to a conclusion. Now, that's what some people think. I believe it has some merits, but I think it goes a little further than that. But I hold to both parts, and this is why. As I go, I believe he explains a little more to Ezra about this. So, to me, I think that he's opening up more information for us, which is verse 30 through 39. The world will be turned back to primeval silence for 7 days as in the earliest beginning, so that no one is left alive. After 7 days, the world that is yet awake will be roused, and the corrupt world will die. So you see why I had to look into this. The earth will give back those who sleep, and the dust will give back in silence those who dwell in it, and the resting place will give back the souls that have been entrusted to them. The Most High will be revealed on the throne of judgment, and mercy will pass away. Patience will be withdrawn, and only judgment will remain. Trust will arise, faith will recover strength, and works will have their consequences. Reward will come about. Righteous deeds will awake, and unrighteous deeds won't sleep. The lake of torment will appear, and across from it will be the place of rest. So right here is the two places. This is actually two worlds that you're seeing. On the right hand is the world you want to get in. The left hand is the world you don't want to be in. The lake of torment will appear, and across from it will be the place of rest. Hell's furnace will be displayed, and across from it the delightful paradise. Then the Most High will speak to the nations that have been raised. Look, and understand whom it is you have denied, whom you have served, whom and whose ordinances you have despised. Look to the one side and the other. Here is delight and rest, and over there is fire and torments. He will say these things to them on Judgment Day, a day that has no sun or moon or stars. And the best way I can explain this is, I believe this to be 4 days from now, a day as 1,000 years, 1,000 years as a day. But there's a segment of the sevens. The seven, he inspects. Are you clean? If not, shut them up another 7 days. There's something going on with Genesis chapter 1, verse 2. We don't know how old the earth is. Are we experiencing segments of sevens? And we're getting ready to start another segment? But the whole world is going to be erased, all the people, through the fire, but only those who are obedient. They will be put in a place of safety, and then they will come back out to inherit this wide space. They now made it to the wide space. Rabbi, is that the place after life? No, we're talking about both. Those who are alive during this time will be put into a place, but those who are dead already will also go into eternity. So there's two aspects. You got to make sure that salvation covers you in this world as well as the world to come. I'm going to continue to move. 40 through 49, here's the world to come. No cloud, no thunder, no lightning, no wind, no water, no air, no darkness, or even morning, no summer, no spring, no heat, no winter, no frost, no cold, no hail, no rain, no dew, no noon, no night, no dawn, no early dawn, no shining, or brightness or light, but only the splendor of the light of the Most High. All will then begin to see what things are in store for them. It will take a period of about a week of years. Whoa. This is my judgment and the arrangements made for it. I have shown this to you alone, verse 45. I replied, so this is Ezra speaking again. I said before, Master, and I say now, privileged are those now living who observed what you have commanded. What privilege? See, we're used to saying those who are privileged get all the good stuff, the good houses, the good jobs, and, they're privileged now. The beginning of one man and the end of another. So Esau was in the beginning. He was firstborn, but Yaakov got out before him. So he became firstborn. So first shall be last, last shall be first. And so what we're seeing is the beginning of one man and the end of another. So Yaakov was the beginning. He had both his heel in his hand. So the beginning of one man is the end of another. So he asked the question, well, when will these times take place? And so this is what he's showing us, where the beginning of the righteous who will now reign during the millennium. And from that millennium, they will then go into eternity forever. All right, so the last bullet says, but what of those who were the subject of my prayers? Who is there of all the living who haven't sinned, or who among those who have been born hasn't transgressed your covenant? Now I see that the world to come will bring delight to few, but torment to many. The inclination to do evil grew in us. It alienated us and led us to corruption and the paths that lead to death. it showed us the way to damnation and removed us from far from life. And this happened not to a few people, but to nearly all who were created. He replied to me, listen to me. I will instruct you and will advise you yet again. So he's still speaking to him because he's asking another important part of the question. What about those of us who were able to keep your commandments, but somehow we were deceived into getting off track? And so therefore, we go through all the torment in the earth to only get to you or before the Most High to see what is good and bad and then be turned away? So will that be part of our torture, to be tortured in the earth and then get to the heavens and still not make it in because of our misdeeds? We got off the path. But at some point, can we return? Will we return? Have we returned? Speaking of every person in their own situation. So this is where he's going with this. So he's making it really emphatic that there is a privilege of being saved if those who observe. What do we observe? Yahweh's commandments. Sabbath, holy days, eating correct, loving our neighbors as ourselves, Yahweh. And as I begin to really close this out, this is my last slide. I said I was going to reveal to you what I've already revealed to you. And I say that so that you can match up what I said, who shall be saved. I want our children to know I'm desperate. Hear me when I say that. I'm desperate. So I got to go through you, parents, to make sure that you understand what I'm saying to you, so you can make sure that your children understand what you should also point out to them, to keep Yahweh's Sabbath, keep his holy days. Be obedient to what Yahweh says do. Let's get into it. Because of this, the Most High made not one world, but two. There it is. So in the beginning, he didn't make just one world. He made two. But because of the fall, the original sin, the second world, which is the one you want to be in, became a narrow path to get to it. But we must continue down the path to get there. Regarding what you said about the just being not many but few, and the wicked being numerous, think about this. If you have very few choice stones, will you add lead and clay to their number? So in other words, if you have stones, will you go and make some more by using lead and clay? Here's his answer. He's speaking, he's given Ezra's a comparison. And here's his answer, Ezra's answer. I said, Master, who would do such a thing? He said to me, not only this, but ask the earth, and it will inform you. Flatter it. So he's kind of being, insinuating to him now. Flatter it, and it'll tell you. Say to it, you created gold, silver, bronze, iron, and also lead and clay. But silver is more numerous than gold, bronze than silver, iron than bronze, lead than iron, and clay than lead. Decide yourself then which thing are precious and desirable, what is abundant or what is rare. I said, Supreme Master, that which is abundant is cheaper, because what is more rare is valuable. He replied to me, reflect on what you have thought. One who has what is scarce rejoices more than one who has what is abundant. So also will be the judgment I have promised. I will rejoice over the few who will be saved, because they are the ones who made my honor to prevail now, and through whom my reputation is. And so as I begin to just close out from here, I want to give you one other quick comparison that he says to him, and says, go to a woman who has a child. She has 10 in all, and ask her, woman, why do you have one at a time? Why didn't you have all 10 at one time? Ask her. And he actually put it in a different way, but I'm going to leave it right there for those of you who may read it. And so as he says this to him, and as I read different accounts, it was part of my research to help me understand what he's already said. If you go out to the depth of the sea, how would you measure it? But if you start from the land, you would have some type of measuring tool by the time you get to the depth, because we can go out by ships today. You have some type of understanding instead of just going to the just appearing in the middle of the ocean or the sea, trying to understand it with no understanding of the boundaries of land. So if those who I made the earth to inherit, the ones I made the earth for, the other ones, they're really nothing but a drop. They're really nothing. But I made the earth for you. But only those who inherit the earth will experience it through what I have commanded and what they have done. Now all will be judged. This is a fall, get up. We fall, we get up. The priest, he will check us. And if we have sinned, we'll be closed in. But he will come back and he will check us again. And if we are clean, we don't stay down in the mud. If we are clean, we get up. And we continue on the path. And those who go through the path, yes, they will experience a lot of trouble, but stay on the path, because it's going to lead you to the wide open space. As he said, those who will inherit this, I will place him on the open field. Or remember the bird that was taken and he was dipped into the earthen vessel of blood. He was open, he was let go where? In an open field. So all of this I say to show you who would be saved are those not that you know, if you sin, know that his grace is sufficient. Get up. Know that ahead of time so that if you fall, get up. Get back on the path. Can we give Yahweh a praise?